Welcome to Ponchatoula Live, the show where we make it easy for you to connect with the people of Ponchatoula. I'm your host, Parker Layrisson, and today I've got a fantastic guest, one of my favorite people. I miss her so much since she retired because when I used to see her, every time I walked in the bank, whether I had no money in the account or not, she had a big smile on her face, and she was just a friendly person that I remember all the way back to when I was a kid. I'm talking about my dear friend, Miss Shirley Dykes. Miss Shirley, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me.
Well, it's exciting to have you on the show. Why don't we kick things off with you just telling us a little bit about yourself?
Okay. Um, I am a Ponchatoula native. My name is Shirley. My maiden name is Forrest. My married name is Dykes. I was raised in Ponchatoula on a strawberry farm. My dad was a strawberry farmer, so I kind of know what it is to get up in the morning and pick strawberries before I went to school. But I had a good life in Ponchatoula. I mean, we lived on the east side of town, but I'm thankful. I'm thankful for the opportunity that I've had to be always, always a part of Ponchatoula. It's my heart. I love it. When I was a kid, I used to kind of laugh and say, "Oh, when I get grown, I never want to live in this one horse." I called it a one horse town. I don't ever want to live in this one horse town. I can't wait to get out of here. But guess what? It's something in here. It's something in
Right,
here that
right.
you may go off, and I did.
Yeah,
My husband traveled on his job, and
sure.
we traveled a little bit, but I always wanted to come home. It's good to go, but it's good to come home.
I can relate 100%.
Yes.
I think anybody who grew up here and lives here now can relate. And the people that move miss it, and the people who come back are glad to return. And I love that you shared that story that way. You mentioned you grew up on a strawberry farm. So in a bit, we're going to talk about the products that you sell through Old Hardhide. But when we get to strawberry jellies and jams and things of that sort, you're an expert. When people talk about farm to table, things like that, you lived it back in the day, right? The farm was right
Yes,
outside your window and the table right there. So that,
absolutely.
that's cool. What was that like? My dad talks often about how his first job was picking strawberries, a very common tale for people of his age in Ponchatoula. But he started out picking at the LeBlanc farm, which was located here in what's now the city limits, on what he called Mackey's Canal, because his buddy Mackie LeBlanc called it his canal. But what was it like growing up on a farm? Were you out there picking with the boys like my dad and them, or what was your childhood
Yes,
like?
yes, absolutely. I can remember my first little, what we called hand carriers back. I was like 4 years old. My dad made me a 4 pint hand carrier because I was too little to carry the big one. I still have that hand carrier to this very day. I do have it. But we would get up in the mornings and
Cool.
we would pick strawberries before we went to school. Um, it was at that time, it wasn't an honor. It wasn't, we were like, "Oh no, mama, please don't make us get up." But, we would get out there. I can remember whenever, before they put plastic on the berries, we used to have to go to the thicket and actually rake the straw. And that we would shake the straw on the berry plants, and then we would do what they called mulch the berries out. I can remember all of that. And I can remember playing on that big pile of strawberry, of the straw that we had, and coming in at night because the straw was kind of pointed and pickety, and we would have all little red marks all over our legs from playing in that straw. But it was a good life. I mean, we didn't. My mom and dad weren't millionaires. They worked for a living, and they taught me. I guess what I have in me has been instilled in my work ethics, my ethics with being a cordial person. My daddy used to say, if you can't say anything kind about somebody, then don't say anything at all.
I
And that
heard
has
that one
stuck with
growing
me.
up for sure.
That has
That's a
stuck
great
with me
lesson.
my whole life. It
Mhm.
really has, and I guess I kind of inherited that from him because I do have his personality.
Yeah,
I'm kind of laid back. I'm not real
yeah,
hyper. I'm kind of laid back, but
right.
but I inherited that, and he hated getting old, and guess what? I inherited that too because I hate getting old. I hate getting old. My mom would always say, old age is just a number. It's a beautiful thing. Old age is a beautiful thing. And as I began to get older, and when my mom was still living, I would tell her, Mom, I never knew you to ever tell me a lie, but that's one lie you told me, because there is nothing beautiful about getting old. Nothing at
Well,
all.
you were like a fine wine. You are aging well,
Oh,
and
well,
um,
thank you.
and with a lot of grace. And and you're right about the personality that your father passed to you, which you've made your own. In that you have a calming presence. And I wasn't kidding about what I said about the bank. It's just, when you were working at the bank, and I would see you, big smile on your face. It just, it would make my day better. Just it'd be easy. And now it's the same when I see you anywhere. You think I last saw you in person outside the ice cream shop, and I go from the stress of trying to break up fights between my boys or
Yes.
whatever's going on. And it's just kind of a refuge, in a wild world, to have a good, calm, friendly friend like you. So tell us more about your parents. You mentioned the work ethic they instilled in you, a few lessons. When you think of your mom, your dad, what pops in your mind first?
I think of my dad as being my best friend. He
Wow, what a
absolutely was
blessing.
my best friend. He was my best friend. I absolutely, adored my mom, but I was the boy. My daddy, I was raised in a family of 5 girls. My dad never had any boys, so I guess I was the boy he never had. I'm the one that went hunting and went fishing and rode the tractor, and the things that I guess boys do. But I grew up to be, a feminine person, but I enjoyed being around my dad. He was laid back, like I said. My mother was a little bit hyper, but as good as a person could ever be. She would tell it like it is. If she wanted to tell you something and it may not be exactly what you wanted to hear, she would tell it to you, but she never held a grudge. Never, never. I can never remember my mama
Mhm.
holding a grudge. She would always say, no, I got it out of my system, and we're fine, um, but I did. I enjoyed my childhood. I enjoyed being raised in Ponchatoula. I enjoyed, my family, my dad's family immigrated here from, actually they came from the old country, from Ireland. Well, then
Oh,
they went
wow.
to they went to North Carolina, and then they
Hmm.
ended up going to what is called State Line between Franklinton and Tylertown.
Uh-huh.
So they were sharecroppers there, and that's what everybody did back then. My
Right.
mom immigrated here from. It's so funny because how they met. My mom is from West Texas. I mean, she's from like Lubbock area, West
Wow.
Texas.
Yeah.
They immigrated here because her dad passed away when she was 3 years old. So
Oh.
my grandmother had 6 children, and she had to start following the crops. And
Hmm.
she took the children, and they followed the crops, and they heard about strawberries in Ponchatoula. So that's when they came to Ponchatoula to pick strawberries. And then my dad's family heard about this land that they had in Ponchatoula, and people were planting
Yeah.
strawberries and doing well. So he came here with his family, and they bought property out on Dunson Road, which
Hmm.
is out by the high school, out by Vineyard School.
Right.
They bought property out there, and I still live on that same property. I
Oh,
live on
that's
that same
cool.
property.
All these
I
years
do.
later.
I do. I live on the same property, and they started farming. Well, my mom worked in a little cafe. I don't know if you remember the coffee pot. You wouldn't remember it,
I
but your
don't
mom and
personally
dad would
remember
remember
it,
it.
but I've
Your
heard a
mom,
ton about it. My parents, and then of course, Mr. Danny Williams is a mentor of mine, and that
right,
was his family's restaurant. So
right.
I've heard a lot about the coffee pot. We've talked about it on the show a few times. I understand the coffee pot did not even have locks on the doors because it was open every day of the year, including Christmas, which is wild. That just blows
I
my mind.
I can remember my mother talking about how she loved Miss Williams. She loved
Hmm.
her. Well, then that is actually kind of how my mom and dad met. My dad was here because his family had bought property out on Dunson Road, like I said. My mom was here because her family had immigrated here and following the harvest. Well, they decided to stay in Ponchatoula, and then my mom and dad met here, and we kind of laughed about it because said my daddy came from Mississippi, my mother came from West Texas. They came to Ponchatoula, they met and they married, and stayed here. I mean, stayed
Right.
here,
They met in
raised,
the middle state.
yeah,
Well, good
stayed
thing your
here.
mom came this way because the land is a lot richer here than way out in West Texas. That is a
Oh, it is.
brown, existence out there. Years like people would eventually strike oil and get rich and whatnot, but I'd rather be poor in Ponchatoula than rich in West Texas any day of the week. No, no offense to Lubbock. I want to share here a comment. We've got a comment from a wonderful man himself, Mr. Wayne Middlebrook. Mr. Wayne,
Oh,
thank you for
I like
tuning in.
Wayne.
He says, Miss Shirley, that you're such a good person.
Oh,
And
thank
of course,
you.
one, I agree, he's right. And two, Wayne, what's the old saying? It takes one to know one.
Yes,
Um,
yes.
that's kind of you to share. And of course, you're spot on. And I want to use this as an example to anyone who might be watching live. As you can see, we have the ability to share your comment here live on the show. So if you just want to say hey or say something nice to Miss Shirley, as Wayne has done, fire away. If you have a question about her or her products, which we'll talk about a little later, feel free to ask there too. We just ask that you keep it positive and encouraging, and in the true Ponchatoula spirit, it pretty much always is. We're here with Miss Shirley Dykes. We've been talking about growing up in Ponchatoula in the good old days of strawberry farming and how she picked strawberries before school and how her parents got here from Texas and Mississippi. So, you've mentioned their kind of love story and how y'all got here and what a joy it was to grow up in a house with two wonderful people, your best friend and your dad, and a wonderful woman and your mother. Um, you know, let's talk about that chapter right before you kind of leave the nest, Ponchatoula High School. This being a one high school town, I love talking about this. We talked about this, you and I, Miss Shirley, off the air. My dad and his friends just had their 64th, I think, reunion that Miss Patsy Kraft, speaking of Mayhaw jelly and muscadine jelly and things of that sort, as we did earlier, Miss Patsy Kraft makes a great jelly herself,
She
but she
does.
organized this class reunion and they did it at Millside. And this morning, my dad was telling me all about it. So what was the PHS experience like for you, when you were back in school?
I went, when I went to school, I'm from the class of 1970, so I'm probably about 10 years younger than your dad. But I went back then, people did not move around like they move around now. I went all the way from back then, we didn't have kindergarten. So you went first grade all the way through to 12th grade. And I actually graduated from Ponchatoula High School, and my class was 1970. It was a good school.
Yeah.
The high school was where the junior high is now.
My
And
wife
I
worked
can
there.
remember
Such a
climbing
gorgeous.
those stairs to
Yeah.
that third floor.
Third floor.
I can remember that. Yes. But
Was
it
Mr. Butler still the principal when you were there?
Mr. AJ Barker was.
Bacher, okay, Mr. Bacher.
Yes.
Wow, what two legends there. Wow.
Yes. Yes. And
So
loved Mr. AJ. I loved him.
he was such a fine gentleman, such
Yes, he was.
a great person in so many people's lives. I had the pleasure to know him. And my next door, growing up, we didn't have any biological papas or grandfathers with us. So my next door neighbor, Mr. Wink Vineyard, kind of stood in that gap for my brothers and I. And he and Mr. Bodker were like best buddies, and they would take us fishing. And those are just the best days of my childhood. I mean, but there's no finer man than AJ Bodker to come through Ponchatoula. What was it like there? Who were your friends? What were you into? Did you have favorite teachers? Just tell us about that era of Ponchatoula High.
I actually, I was in the class of Tom Inman, Andy Edwards, Malou Burris. All of them were my classmates. They were all my classmates. We had a good class. We did have a good class. Now, when I was in first grade, I will never forget my first grade, and we were learning to, and I'm kind of ashamed to tell this, but it's the truth. We were learning to print our names. Well, I had, long hair back then, and my mom would pin it up, and I got a bobby pin out of my hair, and I wanted to claim my desk. So I scratched the S on my desk, and Arthur Thompson was in my class, and he went and told my teacher. Well, Miss Fast was our first grade teacher, and she had a paddle, and its name was Mr. Boohoo. Well, I got a whipping with Mr. Boohoo. Well, I was determined to get SHIRLEY all the way on my desk. So I got about
Yeah.
seven paddlings because the author would go tell on me
Oh,
every
come
time,
on.
and she would give me a whipping. But then when I got home, back then it's not like it is now. If you
Mhm.
got in trouble at school, you got double trouble when you got home.
Oh,
So,
absolutely. Right.
not
You
only
better.
did I get paddling at school, I got paddling when I got home. And then my Uncle Ernest Pelche, which his
He was
wife
the
and my
chief of
mom,
police, right?
sisters, he was the
Okay.
chief of police after
Uh-huh.
Mr. Abear, I think, Mr. Murphy
Right.
Abear. And he would say, okay, if you get a whipping at school, I'm coming out there because I'm gonna paddle you too. I mean, he was like my second dad. I mean, I lived with them almost. I
Right.
stayed
Right.
with them so much, but yeah, I can remember
Well,
that.
did
And
you make
then
it all the way? Did you make it all the way to Y? You got to.
I did, I
Oh, wait.
did,
Good for you. You had a
I
worn
did.
out booty, but
I
you made
And
it.
then she told me I was gonna have to fix my desk, and I was gonna have to sand it down and repaint it, but
Yeah.
I didn't have to. But that's what she told me, and I was like,
Well,
oh my God, no, I don't want to do that.
I'm so glad you mentioned that because I'm envious of those good old days of Ponchatoula when it was small enough that you kind of knew everybody. Because as you rattle through this story, I'm tickled. Mr. Arthur Thompson has been a giant figure in my
Yes.
life, literally and figuratively forever. We grew up across the park from him. His son Artie was my brother Bree's best buddy all through school, and I grew up spending the night at their house and playing over there all the time. And I walk by their new house every day. So when I see him next, because I see him out in his yard quite often, I'm gonna have to get on to him for tattling on you.
I'm
But
telling you, it's
but what a
great.
great man he is. Andy Edwards, when I came back to practice law after working a few years in the government, I was poor. I didn't have two nickels to rub together. Our families went way back. His dad and my grandfather were really good friends. And so he gave me a very favorable month to month lease. And we had a deal on a handshake and nothing else for 12 years. And, I owe him so much. He was a fabulous mentor to me. Tom Inman, a great family friend of my dad's. His son Chance is one of my dearest friends. We've traveled the world together from Chicago to Miami, and just he's been a great friend. And Miss Malou Burris, who you mentioned, now Thompson, she edited my accident handbook,
Oh, really?
along with her daughter, who was my classmate, and brilliant women who are just incredible, grammarians and readers, and so the lack of typos in that book is not due to my writing; it's due to their editing. So just a wonderful class you had.
I
That's
did.
really an exciting
I
time
did.
to pass through. So thank you for sharing that stories. I love hearing about stories, and especially the old building, because my wife now works there. She's the counselor at the junior high. And so when I hear you tell your story about getting paddled all those times, or my dad telling the story about how they almost burned the place down and when the science lab experiment went bad, it kind of makes me smile. So thank you for sharing that. So, folks, if you're listening or watching, we're here with Miss Shirley Dykes. She's telling us all about childhood growing up in Ponchatoula, from the strawberry patch to PHS. Now let's move forward to that next, chapter in life. How did you get from there as a child to going out on your own and entering adulthood?
Well, when I graduated from high school, I back then a lot of people, some did and some didn't, chose to go to college. Well, I had taken my test to enter and go to Southeastern. Well, December the 1st of 1970, I got a call from, back then it was Guarantee Bank and Trust. And back then, I mean, if a young lady out of high school got a job in a bank, I mean, it was a good job. So I
Absolutely.
chose to take, I chose to take the job in a bank rather than go to school. Probably shouldn't have, but I did. And I did. I enjoyed my banking years. Um, I worked there at Guarantee Bank and Trust for 2 years. And then I went to what used to be Citizens National Bank. And Mason Foster was the head cashier there. And he hired me. I remember the question that he asked me, the decision as to why he chose to hire me. And he told me later on. And he said, Shirley, I know you work at Guarantee Bank. If I ask you something about a customer and their account at Guarantee Bank, would you tell me? And, I was a young kid, like 18 years old. And I'm like, I would not. And he said, why not? And I said, because that's none of your business. That's confidential information. I can't give you that information. And
Right.
he laughed and he told me later on, he said, well, between the answer you gave me and your blue eyes is the reason I hired you. And I worked for him for 26 years.
Wow. Wow.
I did. And I love, we were
Yeah.
even bankers back then. They were very personable. I mean, we were all
Right.
like family. We were like
Yeah.
family. We really were. And
Yeah, my dad always tells me about the old days of banking and how so much of it was just on a handshake and trust. And you could call your banker from vacation in Florida and
absolutely.
get something taken care of, and no paperwork or anything, but they knew who was good for it and who wasn't, and y'all had a lot of autonomy, to do it right. And sadly, it's so overregulated now that's not really the case. I want to share a couple more comments that are coming in with you, Miss Shirley, because they're from people that I know that you and I both love, and you'll see they love you. First and foremost, our mayor, Jay Wesley Daniels.
I
Wesley knows
love
what I'm talking
Wes.
about, spending the night at Arthur Thompson's house. He was there too. You were saying, Miss Shirley? I'm sorry.
I love Wes.
Oh
I
yeah,
love Wes.
what a great guy. He says that he just loves you, and so Wesley, Mayor, thank you for chiming in, and Miss Kathy Pepitone. Hey, Miss Kathy, how are
Oh,
you?
I love Kathy.
So Miss Kathy's son Boog and Wesley were the two-star guards on our basketball team that won the championship at St. Joseph back in the day in the early '90s. I was watching them from the bench. Both great guys, both great players, and Miss Kathy is just a wonderful woman. And she says that you are her beautiful friend. And Miss Kathy, I want to thank you
Oh,
for sharing that. And
I
of
love
course,
her.
like I said earlier to Wayne, it takes one to know one. Two beautiful
Right.
women, and Miss Kathy and Miss Shirley. If anybody else is watching and you'd like to share a comment, as Miss Kathy or Wesley or Wayne have done, feel free to chime in. We are here with the wonderful, beautiful, and charming Shirley Dykes, and she's telling us about how her career got started in banking. So you're talking about 1970, a little bit before I was even born. But your career carried you through many, many years, because I was boohooing earlier about you retiring, but that only happened pretty recently. So tell us about how you weave through to end up, because you mentioned working for another mayor, Mason Foster, for
Mhm.
20 plus years. But I think your career would span almost double that. So how did you end up all the way to retiring at the first all those years later?
I actually, first of all, I want to say something about Kathy.
Oh,
Kathy
please
was
do.
my best friend in high school. And actually, I was her maid of honor in her wedding. So
Oh,
I
wow.
love Kathy. I love Kathy. She's a
Well, then I got
sweetheart.
to give a shout out to her husband, Coach Louis Dugas, who was our basketball coach and just one of our heroes growing up. Great family, great family.
I have
And,
spent many nights in that Pepitone, in that Pepitone house. I have.
uh,
I did. I love Miss Josie. I love the whole family.
so here we go. It says shared the feeling of being Mustang owners when you worked at
Oh my God.
TG&Y. Oh, got to hear about that. I do remember TG&Y.
We did.
So wait, a Mustang? Were y'all really? Y'all both had Mustangs? Those were
We
cool rides.
did. We did. I had a 1965 Mustang, little burgundy
Uh huh.
Mustang, and Kathy had a white one, and hers was a fastback, and it was a pretty, really pretty car, you know. But we did. We worked our last couple of years in high school at TGMI. So that's what I'm saying about work
Oh
ethics.
wow, that's
Is
very
I
cool.
actually left school, and Kathy did too. Left school. We went to TGMI,
Yeah.
and we worked at TGMI. And then when I graduated from high school, you know, I went to work in the bank, but we worked for like 2 years together.
Very
And
cool.
then we both ended up working for the same bank. She worked in Ponchatoula and I worked in
I do
Amherst.
remember. I remember her well being
Yes,
at the Ponchatoula
yes,
branch. Yeah,
yes,
because that's
yes,
where I banked. That was my first bank as a kid. Really
yes,
neat. Very, very, very cool. Well, my mama was a banker too. She worked at First Guarantee Bank. One of
yes.
my
I
best
remember.
friends, Chad Richard, his sister and mama worked in banking. So
Hmm.
you banking ladies of Ponchatoula were kind of celebrities when we were kids. We all knew you. Whatever bank you went to, you had one of your buddies' moms or something there. That was cool. Well, Miss Kathy, thank you chiming in. She put 67
Yeah, I
fastback in
see
the notes
that.
here,
Yes, it
so
was. It was
that's
pretty
cool.
too. It was
Um,
pretty. But speaking of Chad, Richard, and Brenda Wolf, they're my cousins. Their mother is
right?
my cousin. Yeah,
Did
so we
explain that connection? I always knew that you and Miss Jeanette were related. I never could quite place
Jeanette's
how.
dad and my dad brothers.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
Hmm.
Small world. Well,
Yeah.
she was one of my second moms growing up, Miss
Yes.
Paulette Poche, Sandra Johnson, it was a little crew of moms that we all kind of rotated, spending the night at their house. Your cousin Jeanette was known as having the best snacks. Wesley
Yeah.
could tell you that. Wesley and Chad were also very close friends. And there was a lot of sugar in that household that was not allowed at the Layrisson household. You never know it now. I grew up looking like this, and Chad's fit as a fiddle, but he had every kind of cola and candy that you could imagine. So my mom, she's like, "Why doesn't Chad ever come over here?" And I'm like, "Well, I'm asking to go over there because they got the snacks."
They got good.
But
Yeah.
they
That's
did, they
funny.
did.
That's funny. I
But
think you also were in the class with my niece,
who's
Shanda
that?
Coker. Shanda
Oh
Coker.
yeah, absolutely. Yeah, well, Shannon was
Shanda.
actually, believe it or not, she was a year ahead of us, but I knew her well, and we certainly ran in
Yeah.
the same circles. She was like
Yeah.
head cheerleader or something, and
Yeah.
she dated the point guard ahead of Wesley and Boog, Adam Woodard back then. I
And they
guess
married.
he became her husband. Yeah. And do they live in Alabama now? Do I have that right?
They live in Charleston, South Carolina.
South
Have
Carolina.
been there
Okay.
many,
Okay.
many years. They've been there
Yeah.
many years. Yeah.
Yeah, they were like one of the original power couples of our little generation. Yeah, wonderful people, smart, beautiful inside and out, just great. Wow, I didn't know that was your niece. That's neat to know.
Yeah. Her
Well,
mom and me are sisters, and we
okay,
and that's the sister that looks like me. Everybody thinks we're
okay.
twins.
Lucky. That's a good draw. Well, tell me about. Let's move past banking and into your current career because I have been fascinated with this Old Hardhide brand that you developed and the products that you have. Folks, Miss Shirley can hook you up with things that make the things that taste good, things that smell good, you name it. And I've enjoyed things from jellies and jams to bath bombs and whatnot, or shower bombs, I guess. But tell us about that. We have here in the notes in the comments below on Facebook a link to your page, your Facebook page for Old Hardhide LLC. But how did this come about? When did you decide to be an entrepreneur and develop this?
Actually, Parker, my whole life I have always had an extra gig. I was telling Danny that a while ago. I mean, I've always done something on the side. But about 2 years ago, I think it was, I went to my son's house, and you may know BJ is my
Oh,
son.
absolutely. Yeah, I know BJ well.
Well, I went to his house, and he doesn't now. He wears a shadow beard, kind of like yours, but he used to wear a big beard. Well, I went to his house one day, and I went to the restroom, and I saw this can, about a 2 ounce size can, and it was on his vanity. And I said, "Baby, what is that?" And he said, "Mama, that's my beard balm." And I said, "Where do you get that from?" And he said, "From the barber." I said, "How much do you pay for it?" Mama's going to want to know, how much you pay for it. Make sure my kid ain't spending too much money. He said, "Mom, anywhere from $20 to $28. And I said, "Have you lost your mind?" And he said, "Why,
Wait,
Mama?" He
the old
said,
strawberry farmer from Ponchatoula goes, I can make that for you cheaper.
well, he asked me, "Mama, do you think you can make that?" And I said, "No, I don't." And he looked at me so strange, and I said, "No, I know I can make that." It took
That's
me
cool.
8 months, several barbers, and several what I called guinea pigs. And I would tell them, "I don't care if
Who
you
are you
don't
guinea
like it."
pigs? Who volunteered for those early
All
editions?
of
Did
his
they lose their
baseball team,
beard?
all of his
Okay,
baseball team, because they all wore, he still plays
right.
ball. He's 42 years
Well,
old,
that's
still
I was gonna
plays
say.
ball.
BJ played at an all-star level into his 40s. I mean, he travels the
Yeah,
world playing
he
baseball
still
all-star
does.
games.
He
Yeah,
still
right.
does.
Yeah.
Um, and so I would say, "BJ, bring this to your ball players. Bring this to them and tell them, I don't care if they don't like the fragrance. What I'm looking for is the consistency." And so after about 8 months, several guinea pigs, several barbers, including the bearded barber in Hammond, and I maybe shouldn't have mentioned his name, but
No, I'm
anyway,
glad you did.
I,
Shout out to
yeah,
Matt Austin. That's my barber.
yeah,
There's not
yeah,
much to cut up there, but he does great work with very little. And
yeah.
he's going to come on the show. We haven't worked out the date yet, but great guy, and I'm glad you gave him some props. Please continue, Miss Shirley.
After about 8 months, I went to, I kept bringing it to him. I kept bringing it to Teal Myers also.
Yeah, yeah, another great
I
band.
kept
Teal's been
bringing,
on the
and I
show.
know Teal makes his own products, and he said, "Miss Shirley, but I think you got it. I think you got it now." So I said, okay, if I have it, then we need to get legal. So then that's where I went to, and he's not really one of your competitors, but he is my friend, and he is an attorney, and his name is Maurice Trippy in Hammond.
Oh, I
You
like
know Maurice?
Maurice a lot.
I
Yeah, I
love
mean,
Maurice.
I hope
Yeah.
you never need me. I do car accidents and big truck
I
accidents,
know.
and
That's why I
Maurice
didn't
is
come
more
to
of a
you.
business advisor and other stuff. But Maurice turned me on to a legal education seminar in New York that my wife and I enjoy traveling to. I'm forever in his debt. He's a great guy.
Anyway, when I called him up one day and I said, Maurice, we need to talk. And he said, okay. So I went in and I showed him what I had. And he said, what you want to do with that? And I said, I think that I want to market this. And at that time, I only had this, just the Beard Balm.
The Beard Balm was your only product.
Beard Balm was my only product. And I said, but I think that I want to get legal with the state. And he said, okay, we can do that. And I originally wanted to name my company Old Hardhide Beard Company. And he said, and I know you know Maurice, so he looked at me and he said, no. And I said, why are you telling me no? And he said, Shirley, I've known you for many, many years. You make candles, you make jelly, you make what? Nobody is going to search the web on a beard company looking for a jar of jelly. He said, no, we're not naming it Beard Company. We're naming it Old Hardhide LLC. That way you can umbrella everything under that. And I said, okay. Well, I said, surely that name has been taken because of the alligator here in Ponchatoula. And he said, let's try it. Well, instead of me putting OLD, I put OLE, Hardhide. And it was not taken. The name was not taken. So we grabbed the name. And I said, okay, let's do it, so we did, and it went from there.
So what I've done, Miss Shirley, is I've brought up your Facebook page here. I don't know if you can see that on the little screen you have, but folks, as I mentioned, there's a link to this page in the comments to this, or you can just go on Facebook and look for Old Hardhide, OLE, like Ole Miss, not OLD, like Parker's getting old because his beard's getting gray. But as you can see here, I see some of your delicious jellies up front here. But if I click here, I think you'll see you just have a ton of products.
I do.
What is this neat picture here? What is that? Oh, wow.
That's when I first decided.
Okay.
Yes, that's the newspaper ad that I first started. And that was when Missy had the Ponchatoula Times. And she came up to my house and interviewed me. And
so a wide variety. I see your balms here where you started, beard balms. But if you don't mind, Miss Shirley, tell us about everything you sell, and then I want to get into vintage 985 because people can reach out to you online and order stuff to understand it. But there's also a boutique they can get to. Please, let's turn this into a little infomercial. People are interested. Tell us about what you got.
Okay, this is my alligator Old Hardhide. I have a huge one. I have a big one, but I chose to brought the little.
That's the small one. Wow, that's cool.
It's the small one.
Wait to see the big one.
It is a small one. I actually designed this. I went and got the driftwood. I got the moss out of my trees. I got the rocks out of my driveway. The little alligator I ordered, and I cut the little strawberries so they would lay flat on the driftwood. Anyway, I did that. The flag represents our flag in Ponchatoula, and on my big one, which is about maybe 2.5, 3 feet long, I have Old Hardhide. A lot of people don't know, but Old Hardhide was a female. So on the big one that I have at the store, I have a crown on her. And I have written on there, I have Queen of Ponchatoula, Old Hardhide. So that's when I decided to, when I decided to go with the Old Hardhide, it was because, and I won't get into any of that issue with the alligator, but as long as I can remember, we've always had an alligator in Ponchatoula.
Right.
So, that was a little bit upsetting. So whenever I decided to do my product, I said, well, why don't we kind of name it after the alligator? So that's where the Old Hardhide came from. Not to be mean or revengeful or anything about the alligator, but I can remember, and your dad probably can too, and your mom, I can remember the first Old Hardhide. I
Wow.
can remember when the first Old Hardhide
Yeah.
died, they actually had a second line dance. They
Yeah,
had a
well,
funeral
that I was
procession.
gonna mention that. So,
They
I
did.
remember that when we were kids and because they had the mouth taped up, and they actually let little kids like us get on the back of it and everything,
Mhm.
and I'm sure PETA would not approve, but, it's a tribute. You're doing a positive thing here. You're not, making a stink about what happened with the alligator, but, it's really neat that you honor that because that is a big part of our culture. Let's
It
face it, we
is.
are on the edge of the swamp. We're
It
we are
is.
closer to Man Shack than anything. And all you got to do, I mean, really think about it. When you think about it, as the crow flies, I bet that the swamp walk off the interstate is closer to Ponchatoula than Man Shack. We call it the Man
Right.
Shack swamp walk, but if you were walking there, you'd get there quicker from the center of Ponchatoula than the center of Acres or Man
Right.
Shack. So that's really a neat concept. And of course, it also has a broader appeal because while you and I know Old Hardhide and the history, the image of the alligator is much wider than the story of Hardhide. So
Yeah.
that's really cool. Miss Shirley, you got some more love coming in here that I want to share. Speaking of great local vendors, the great Trisha Nicholas. Hey,
Oh,
Trisha, my boys
hi,
will forever
Trisha.
be in your debt, not just because you took such good care of them at Strawberry Castle, but because you pumped them full of delicious ice cream and such. But she says that she loves you, Miss Shirley, and she loves
Oh,
everything you do.
I do
But
too.
she's not alone. Rosemary Gardner comes in and talking about a little mini class reunion. She says hi to you and Kathy and all the old PHS grads. And she says, congrats on your success.
Thank
And
you.
she was the class of 68. So, Miss Rosemary, thank you for tuning in. It's always
Thank
great to
you.
have your support. Another lovely lady of Ponchatoula, the beautiful Jerry Bankston,
I love
the much
you.
better half to
Hey,
my old high
Jerry.
school pal, Philip Bankston, says that she loves you, Miss Shirley. Miss Dot Savoy says, "Go girl, you go girl." And of course, here in Louisiana, that's spelled Geaux. For those of you
UX.
listening on the podcast, um, and Trisha says, "Check out Vintage 985. You have everything there." So, tell us if you would about Vintage 985 and how that setup came to be.
Actually, I will say that when I first started, because I told you I've always had some kind of side gig, I traveled like from festival to craft show to dragging tents to dragging tables to dragging my products. And, after I was telling Danny, almost 2 years ago, I had open heart surgery. I mean, it was a quadruple bypass, and I could no
Oh wow!
longer drag my stuff around like that anymore. So,
Hmm.
Sarah Gill, that owns Vintage 985, she's been my friend for about 35 years. And when she decided that she was going to do that, I said, "Oh, thank you, Jesus, Sarah, let's do it because I never want to ever have to drag a table ever again." So she opened the store there. We opened the first week of December of
Hmm.
this past year. We've done very well there. I have my products are there, which I do have, like I said, the Old Hardhide beard for the men, but then I also have stuff for the ladies. I do the
Oh, tell
lotion
us about
bar.
that. Please share.
That is a solid lotion bar. You take it and you rub that between your two hands. It is a solid lotion bar.
Very cool.
And you rub it between your two hands and you have instant lotion on your hands. One good thing about it is if you're flying on a plane, it's not a liquid. You don't have to check it, and they won't take it away from you. So you just drop it down in your purse. It's a solid. And
Right.
so then I started doing the cuticle oil, which is also the product that goes with that. And then I did the bath bombs for the ladies. So I said, if I'm going to do stuff for men, then I need to do stuff for ladies too. So I did. And it's been very successful. It really has. And then after that, I started kind of venturing out and doing other products. I mean, I do my jams and my jellies, and I do this is my most unique thing. This is a
What is
gourd.
that?
It's a gourd. It's a
Okay.
gourd. It's a gourd. What you do is you clean the gourd out and get all the seeds out of it. You sand the inside of it and you paint on the gourd. I'm not an artist, but I have learned to paint. Believe it or not, I've learned to paint. This is a little ghost sitting on top of a pumpkin, and it's a
Pumpkin. Oh,
birdhouse.
wow.
It's a
Wow.
birdhouse, and you hang it like that.
Well,
With this,
my neighbor Brad Poche made my boys a gourd birdhouse like that, but it's not painted up. So I'm gonna have to get on to him. While I appreciate the gift, he needs to up his game with some art like you've done.
yes,
That looks way cool.
yes. And this one is just a decorative piece that you set like for Christmas. It's a snowman. It's
Yeah.
not a bird. It's not a birdhouse. This is the baby snowman. I have the mama and the dad. So I've got the whole family,
The whole set.
snowman. I sell a lot of those. I sell a lot.
Right. But clearly you have a big creative bent to what you do. I mean, because I noticed like even your lotion bar you showed had a really intricate image in the middle. I don't know what that was, a firefly or a
It's a bee.
dragonfly. A
It's a
bee.
bee.
Okay, well, that was really
It's,
cool. But
it's
where does that come from? Were you an artist as a child? Were you constantly
no.
drawing and creating or crafting?
No, my son is the artist, not me. My son can draw anything, but then when I started thinking about doing this, I was like, oh my goodness, I don't know if I can do that or not, but I'm going to try. I've never not tried something. In other words, like my brain never shuts down. It
Yeah.
doesn't.
You just
It
go
doesn't.
for it. That's neat. And I'm glad it shows don't judge a book by its cover. When you see a big muscle bound baseball player like BJ, artist doesn't come to mind
He can draw
immediately.
anything.
But there he is. Speaking of big sports icons, Marshall Graves, the greatest basketball father in Ponchatoula history, and thankfully the coach of the Parker Layrisson injury attorneys team has chimed in. He has a question for you, Miss Shirley. Was that the first Old Hardhide that you had there? Um, I guess is the image based on the first Hardhide, or
Actually, the old hardhide was when I was a child.
okay,
So, and then I think we've had two or three. I think we've
yeah,
had,
yeah.
I can't
I think
exactly
you're right
remember, but
there.
I think we've had about three.
Yeah.
But actually, I got my idea from, because we no longer have an old hardhide,
Mhm.
and it's always been a part of Ponchatoula. And
So you keep that spirit
I
alive by
wanted to keep it
having
up.
this frame.
Did. I
That's really
did.
neat. Now I
So
mentioned my favorite jelly maker of all time. Okay, and Miss Patsy Kraft earlier, and her delicious mayhaw that my boys love. And she says apparently there's a connection between your jelly and hers. So she says, Miss Shirley, that Miss Patsy remembers the day that you asked her how in the world she could make all that jelly, and she told you it was a lot of hard work,
it
and you
is.
did it anyway. That's
I
amazing.
did.
That you did.
I
Well,
did.
Miss
I
Patsy, I
did.
don't know if you were on at the beginning of the show, but I was bragging about your class reunion when I visited mom and dad for coffee this morning. It's all they could talk about, to tell me about how packed it was at Millside and what a good job you did organizing that. So thank you for giving my mom and dad something to do. There are other comments coming in here. The lovely Miss Donna Hayden says that she loves you and congratulations on your latest endeavors.
I
A
love her.
fellow banker here, Miss Martha Lulu Ray, says hey to you. And circling back from earlier, Trisha Nicholas says that your cuticle oil is amazing.
She does love it.
So thank you to everyone for chiming in, for communicating here with Miss Shirley. She's such a lovely lady, and she's got a good thing going here. And I can tell you that from experience. She was telling me about her bath bombs one day, and I said, oh, too bad I don't take a bath. And she says, well, I've got shower bombs. And she gave me these shower bombs. And my wife knows every scent and could say, I don't remember, was it eucalyptus or something? But they were amazing. I came out of that shower so refreshed. And your products are just great. Whatever you're doing to dial in these scents is really, really on point. You got something else in your hand there, Miss Shirley? What's that?
These are for your boys.
Oh, thank you. You're so thoughtful. Oh,
They're
wow.
the little backpacks, the little
Yeah.
nylon backpacks. And hey, I didn't bring them both the same color. So
Well,
no
I was
fight.
going to say, thank you. One, thank you for bringing two so they don't have to
Yeah.
fight over it.
No
And
fight.
two, having them be different is very helpful.
No fight.
You clearly you're a super mom with experience there.
And then I do the dish towels.
Uh-huh.
I do this is the cotton flour sack dish towel.
Okay.
I do the like throw pillows. I do, let me see what I got here. I do, years ago, I made candles. And
Right.
then I decided, candles, they kind of went out for a little while. They are making a comeback. And Wayne has some wonderful candles, Wayne Middlebrook. He has some wonderful candles. So when I decided that maybe I will do a few little candles, I wanted to do something that was appealing to the women. So I do what we call the teacup candle. And it's amazing because it's a perfect gift for a teacher, for Mother's Day, for anything, because they can burn the candle, and the candle has a wonderful scent. They come in different scents. They can burn the candle, and then when they get finished with the candle, they can dig the wick out, and they have a little teacup.
That's really neat.
So
That's
I do those also. It's just, we do a lot of things, and
you
at the
can say
store,
that.
at the
Well,
store, we Vintage 985. We have over 26 vendors
oh
in our
wow.
store. It's a beautiful, what we call artisan boutique,
Hmm.
because almost everything in our store, people actually make it. We do have a little
Yes.
bit of retail stuff, but a lot of our stuff is
You said, oh, I'm sorry, Michelle. You said your brain never stops, but your
yes.
hands never stop either, because that stuff doesn't
I know.
materialize from thought. You are working.
I
So
do.
Vintage 985 was kind enough to share a little quote here for you. And they say that they are so lucky to have you be part of the shop. They love you and all of your amazing products. And it's from all these comments, it seems like that's a common sentiment, because Miss Shirley, you may be setting a new record for comments on our show. There's
Oh,
tons of interest here. Let's see here. I've got a few more I'm going to get to. Miss Dot Savoy says that the handbars are awesome.
she likes them.
Trisha Nicholas wants one of those bags for her grandkid. And well, you know where you can get them,
Yeah, I
Vintage
know.
985. And Marshall Graves says that you came ready with lots of great stuff, and he's giving you some applause for that. And of course, you did. Miss Shirley, I want to thank you for sharing all of this. I know your time is valuable, and for those that did not cannot see or early in the show, you may have heard the thunder outside the windows. It's dark outside, well before it should be. Miss Shirley drove through some really scary weather to be with us here today. So we're very grateful for that. And it's been a treat for me to learn more about your story, because you've helped fill in gaps when I wonder, like, oh, well, how exactly are you and the Richards cousins? And now I know, and I hear about your rich history growing up
And the
from
Pelchays. Yeah,
the Pelchays.
the
Yeah,
Pelchays.
I mentioned Wade Pelchay, the grandson of the chief, was one of my dearest friends,
Right,
and I
right.
spent so many nights spending the night at his house when we were kids in school, from the baseball fields to Ponchatoula High School. He was always looking out for me a year ahead of me. He and your cousin Shanda, very close, and just wonderful people throughout this interview. So I thank you for sharing that story, because that's really what our show is about, is helping connect the people of Ponchatoula and connect the dots with their stories. And I love seeing how they intertwine. But I did promise I get you out here at a reasonable time, and I've kept you about 25 more minutes than I probably expected. So before we break, is there anything else you want to share with us? Anything on your
Well,
mind, on your heart? Anything about your
I
your, your, your products or anything else?
Well, you're saying connecting the people with Ponchatoula, and actually, it's kind of a joke, but when I was a kid growing up, I said, I never could marry anybody from Ponchatoula, because if I married somebody from Ponchatoula, I'd have to be marrying my kin people, because I'm related
You're
to
right, and
everybody else in
my
Ponchatoula. I am related. And then on
yeah.
another hand, talking back about the store, Vintage 985, there is a possibility that we may be expanding.
Oh
Uh,
wow!
so,
So is
so
that something you can share, or is that something in the works? What's the story?
it is in the works. We wanting to expand our because we have a waiting list. We have a waiting list on our people wanting to come in to be vendors.
Wow, that's impressive.
So we are considering that expanding. So
That's
we
really
will
that's really cool.
probably, that may happen in probably September. So,
Yeah.
but
So
right now
the store shares here that you have tons of colors to choose from. You have kids shirts with logos,
I do.
and Trisha says she's going to come by soon. She sure does miss you guys. Y'all being neighbors down there and everything was cool. Let's see. Miss Dot Savoy says go to Vintage 985. You can see a lot more. And Marshall Gray says he loves the show because of episodes like this. And we love loyal viewers and listeners like Marshall. Now, Marshall's been on the show. You can watch us interview Marshall or his son, also named Marshall. Two of my favorite hours ever from two of my favorite guys. But this has just been great, Miss Shirley. It's been a wonderful time. And I think Miss Rosemary Gardner says it best here as an appropriate finale. Ponchatoula rocks. And so
Yes.
you certainly rock. You are one of the many reasons, or one of many reasons this town is so special. It's people like you that make it a place that we not only love growing up with, like you and I did, but as you said earlier, Miss Shirley, you kind of always wanted to come back. Even when we think we want to leave, we realize, nah, this is the place to be. And it's the people. It's not the views. Today's proof. It's darn sure not the weather. It is the people of Ponchatoula that make this the best place in the world to live. So to the many of you listening or watching, we say thank you, and we'll be back next week. And we say goodbye to one of my favorite guests in 150 shows, Miss Shirley Dykes. Take care. I'll see you soon, Miss Shirley. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.